I'm going to request Alexandra to introduce everybody here. We've got Angelica, Auður, Inga, Issa, Pierre, Joris, Rumena. It's fine. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Can we... Well, those of you who came for our session, can we have your attention? Thank you very much for coming to listen to us. I'm Alexandra Buchler. I'm the director of Literature Across Frontiers, which is an organization, it's a platform which works on literary exchange and translation. They don't hear. Can we have the volume up? Maybe when the commotion moves away, we can listen to each other.
Can you make it closer to your mouth?
Yeah, okay. Is this better? Can you hear at the back? Okay. We are based in the UK, we are based in Wales, and our main aim is to ensure exchange between literatures. So we have been coming here to India with European writers. This is the fourth time we are at the Jaipur festival, and we also work with other festivals in the region. It's a great pleasure to host this session, which represents really what we do. It kind of is a kind of symbol of what we stand for, and we have all these writers here. We have 8 writers from 8 different countries. And each of them writes in another language. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to introduce each of them. First of all, I'll just give you the names so that you know who they are. And then I will introduce each in turn, and they will give a short reading and say a few words about what they do, about their writing. And also I have asked them to read or say something in their language, just to give you a little taster of what it sounds like, because we have some interesting languages that you probably have not heard before. So I'll just start with Inga Žolude is from Latvia. Auður Ólafsdóttir is from Iceland. Eluned Gramich is from Wales and Germany. Angelica Freitas is from Brazil, that's Portuguese, and Pierre Joris writes in French, but also in English. He's a kind of very bilingual person, and I'll tell you more about him. Rumena Buzarovska from Macedonia, Simić from Croatia, and Issa Asgarally from Mauritius. And he will tell us a little bit about Mauritius when his turn comes, because I don't know, does everybody know where it is? Does everybody know where Croatia is? We'll see. So we will start with Pierre Joris. It's a really great pleasure and honor to introduce him. He's a writer and poet and translator. He also works mainly with your wife. You work on performance art, and so he's a very prolific person. He's to people who care about poetry, he's very well known. He's also a very nomadic person. He was born in France, he grew up in Luxembourg, and he has lived between the United States and Europe and North Africa. So he's very much at home in the Maghreb, in the French-speaking part of North Africa. He has close to 50 books to his name. These would be poetry books of his own poetry, essays, anthologies, plays, and translations. He has translated really significant authors from French, for instance, Maurice Blanchot, Edmond Jabez. He translated Kurt Schwitters. He also translated Tunisian poet Abdel Wahab Medeb and the Algerian Habib Tengour. And he translates also into French from English. So he's very much comfortable in the two languages, as you will hear. And he's translated, for example, Allen Ginsberg, Jacques Kerouac, Gregory Corso, Julian Beck, Sam Shepard, etc. A collection of essays on his own work, Cartographies of the In-Between, came out recently in 2000, was it 2012 or 11. I found 2 years, maybe there were 2 different editions. So that's Pierre Joris, and he will give us a taste of his work.
Thank you, Alexandra. I'll start with a poem. Anguish, a riddle, that all the languages are borrowed. But then, how do I count them? That do not belong to me. In the first one, I think. In the second, I think. The third is my rhetoric, and the fourth, my west and wagon its wheel at least traces these steps in harmonies of tetratic modalities before and after I think. So I am from Luxembourg. Als je voor Lützeburg, dan kan je eens op Lützeburg zo en dan heet dat spruch. But no longer, and not for 50 years, have I lived in Luxembourg. As a Luxembourger of my generation, I couldn't write in Luxembourgish, my mother tongue. And I should, like all Luxembourgers who write, have chosen between either German or French, the 2 colonial languages that we were brought up with through the educational system. But I chose to write in English. Why did I, as some have accused me of, gone over to the dark side, the empire of evil? The reasons are many. I'll give you a list of them. Because I could, because my grandmother had a movie house, and I saw as a child American movies from very early on, and hundreds of them. Because at 15 I was in love with an English girl, and I wrote some very bad poems for her. Because the problem of German poetry post-World War II were not my problems, even though I've spent 50 years translating Paul Celan, a German language poet from the Bukowina. Because French post-World War II poetry was boring and dead in the water, as I had not yet discovered the poetries of North Africa and the Caribbean, which are the places where the French language lives in poetry, not in Paris. Because of the music I listened to from early on, jazz and then rock and roll and Bob Dylan, our Nobel Prize winner, and so on. Because I had discovered the lively poetry of my age at 15 when I came across Allen Ginsberg's Howl and Kerouac's books and so on. And shortly afterwards, I discovered the American poets from Ezra Pound and the great modernists. And so, enamored as one is at 19, I decided to write in English, or rather in the idiolect of American English. And I moved there. I have kept traveling things, but my base has been somewhere in the US, except for a number of years in North Africa, some years in France, some years in England. I turn around New York. And I love New York because it is a place we speak 150 languages in. My thinking on all this leads to the following realizations. A quote from the German poet Hölderlin. Poetry is the promise of a language. Quoting myself, all languages are foreign languages. There is no original language. Even the mother tongue is always already a translation. We translate in language physiological, electric, metabolic experiences. So all languages are translations, and I'm not worried about the question of the mother tongue, as many poets are. What this further entails is that, as the Finnish-American poet Anselm Hollow said, diaspora is the perfect state. And I'll close with a poem on diaspora, on exile. This afternoon, Dante will be expelled from Florence. A good thing, as how could he have written so well on the faraway imaginary exile of the comically divine realms, had he not known what it meant to walk over a cold January day's ground frost, clod breaking, heart beating, from one city to another, to come to this, that exile is but the next step you take, the unknown, there where your foot comes down, next in heaven or on earth. Exile is when you can still lift a foot. Exile is when you're not yet dead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. What you're going to hear is a range of accents as well. You've just heard a French speaker speaking English with an American accent. We are going to now listen to Eluned Gramich, who is half Welsh, half German. As some of you know, probably Wales is a place which has two languages. Welsh is spoken there as well as English. And Eluned speaks both. She also writes in both. She's going to read from her book in English, which is her debut, and it's called A Woman Who Brings the Rain. It made quite a big splash in Wales. It is a book, it's a memoir based on her on time she spent in Japan. And it won the New Welsh Writing Award in 2015, and it was shortlisted for the Wales Book of the Year last year. Eluned is also a translator, and she translated a book by Monique Schwitter called Goldfish Memory. Eluned, can we have you at the microphone? Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here to read to you today, or in my language of Welsh. Croeso I bawb, diolch yn fawr iawn am y gwahoddiad, ac mae'n pleser I fod yma heddi I siarad gyda chi. So, yeah, I suppose it's not every day you hear Welsh being spoken in Jaipur, so I hope you enjoyed it. As Alexandra said, I'm half Welsh, half German. My father is from Munich, and my mother is from Wales. And so when I was growing up, the question for me was always, what do I write about? Do I write about Wales, or do I write about Germany? Because they're both equally close to my heart. So instead, I wrote about Japan, just completely avoid that issue. I lived in Japan for 2 years, and it was a wonderful experience. And I lived in Tokyo, but for a month I also lived in Hokkaido. Hokkaido is a northernmost island of Japan. It's very, very different from all the cliches or stereotypes of Japan. So it's rural, it's very quiet. It's got a completely sort of different culture than mainland Japan. So I'll just read you a short excerpt from my memoir, Woman Who Brings the Rain. So this is me and my homestay family going for a walk in Niseko, and there's a very famous mountain called Yote-san, which looks exactly like Mount Fuji, but it's a bit smaller anyway. So this is us going for a walk. Do you like it? Tateno-san asks when we pause to look over the valley. I say I do. There's a path that goes from here to the coast to Hakodate, all the way south to the mainland. It takes 4 days. I could make out a narrow, spindly road rising and falling over the hills, not a path as much as an indent in the greenery, sailing gently towards the horizon. I dream of walking all the way to the sea, to the mainland, to Hiroshima in the south. Japanese holly, rowan bushes, Gaultheria, Solomon's seal. The landscape is drenched in green and speckled with red. The landscape is almost Welsh in its wet, muted colour, but at the same time it's distinctly different. Yote is dotted with flowers which can only be found in high altitudes. Flowers from the highlands of China and the Himalayas, which are able to weather the snows here and in Sakhalin and the disputed islands between Russia and Japan. These flowers, mountain harebells and daylilies, are far from the muscular survivors you might imagine. They are fragile, gem-like. The colours, blue, white, yellow, pale as glass. Many of them have the heads like bells nodding on thin stalks. I have the urge to snap them up and collect them, press them into handmade paper, seal them tightly into postcards and diaries. We meet other walkers, a few of them running, clad in black lycra, young and old. They run up and down and again in the time it takes for us to reach the summit. Tateno-san admires them, but I find the extreme athleticism slightly unnerving. There are other groups too, teenage girls dressed up for the occasion in new clothes, scrabbling up the path in gangs of 4 and 5. They laugh. Where is she from? They ask each other under their breath. Strangers look at me appraisingly, curious to know what I'm doing here. Afterwards, safely settled in the hot springs, the women are kind enough not to stare at me as I take off my clothes and get into the pool next to them. They talk about the weather, the shift in temperature. Light rain cools on my bare shoulders. I don't know why, but the onsen is the place I feel most at home in Hokkaido. Even though I'm naked and my foreign body is there for all to see, it's a quieter, more private place where women get on with their own business of washing and relaxing. The girls are there too. Divested of their uniforms, they look older, more self-assured. Their faces are flushed by the steam. White towels balanced prettily on their dark hair. They don't ask me where I'm from, and I am grateful. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr.
So this session is like a journey. We're traveling from country to country, from language to language, and from genre to genre. So after poetry, prose, we're going back to poetry. And I'd like to introduce Angelica Freitas, who is the author of 2 poetry books. A Uterus is the Size of a Fist. And her second book, Rilke Shake, was translated by Hilary Kaplan into English and was the winner of the 2016 Best Translated Book Award in the United States. She's also the author of a graphic novel called Guadalupe. Angelica.
Hello. What a pleasure to be here in Jaipur today, and what a pleasure to be able to read with you all and listen to you. So I come from Brazil. I come from the south of Brazil, which is actually where Brazil ends and Uruguay begins. But I speak Portuguese, and I also write in Portuguese. So the poems I'm going to read for you are the translations, and they have been done by an American poet called Hilary Kaplan. Just for you to get a taste of Portuguese, I have no idea if you've heard the language before. The two first verses of the poem I'm going to read are like this. Dentadura perfeita, ouve-me bem, não chegarás a lugar algum. Perfect teeth, listen up. You're not going to get anywhere. Tomatoes and onions sustain us, and peas and carrots, perfect teeth. Ah, yes, Shakespeare is very nice, but beets, chicory, and watercress, and rice and beans, and collard greens? Lovely little teeth, the bull you're eating just yesterday was chomping in the field, and you complained that the meat was tough. Life's tough, perfect teeth, but eat all you can, and forget this chat, and dig in. Thank you. I enter the idiot's bookstore. I don't have any money, and I don't have a knack for crime either. Lining up before my eyes, wonderful titles, moribund from sitting so long on the shelves. Steal us, they say. We can't stand it anymore in the idiot's bookstore. Who'd believe this version of the facts? Help me, O Amazons, in this most stolen hour of a destitute liberator of books. My heart pounds, it pounds more than the Sombra dram line. My whole body shakes and my hands sweat buckets. I reach the street, hands empty, and the books cry, Sissy. Thank you. These two poems are from my first collection of poetry. It's called Rilke Shake. And now I would like to read a few poems from my second book, which is currently being translated into English by Hilary Kaplan. This poem is, I'm going to read two poems from a series called A Clean Woman, in Portuguese, Uma Mulher Limpa. There are 10 poems, I'm just going to read two of them. And the first one goes like this. Because a good woman is a clean woman, and if she's a clean woman, she's a good woman. Millions of years ago, she stood up on her own 2 feet. Woman was angry and dirty and barking. Because an angry woman isn't a good woman, and a good woman is a clean woman. Millions of years ago, she stood on her own 2 feet. She doesn't bark anymore. She's meek and good and clean. Thank you. And another poem from the series. A woman really liked brushing her teeth. She brushed them vigorously. She brushed them morning, noon, and night, the 3 best times of day. She brushed them with lots of toothpaste in a circular motion, switching between arches while reciting the Prajna Paramita Sutra inside down, or if I had a hammer. She felt so much better when she spit. And I'd like to finish with this one. The title is Eu Durmo Comigo. It means I sleep with myself. I sleep with myself. Lying on my stomach, I sleep with myself. Turning to the right, I sleep with myself. I sleep with myself, hugging myself. There's no night so long I don't sleep with myself. Like a troubadour inseparable from his lute, I sleep with myself. I sleep with myself beneath the starry sky. I sleep with myself while other people have birthdays. I sleep with myself with glasses on sometimes. And even in the dark, I know I'm sleeping with myself. And whoever wants to sleep with me will have to sleep on the side. Thank you.
Angelica's poems are funny, they're ironic, and they're also very serious, you know. They sound simple, but they're not. And the next funny author is Roman Simić. He's also funny and serious. Roman is from Croatia, from Zagreb. He is a short story writer. and he has published 3 award-winning collections of short stories. He also has a selection of his stories in English called Frame for the Family Lion. And his books have been translated into quite a few languages: German, English, Macedonian, Polish, Slovenian, and Spanish. He also speaks Spanish, and he used to translate, but he is now working as editor in really what is the leading publishing house in Croatia. And in my books, his claim to fame is that he established, he founded, and has been the director of this wonderful festival in Croatia, which is called Festival of the European Short Story. So he's a fan of short stories, he writes short stories, and he makes it possible for short story writers to be presented to Croatian readers. Roman.
Hello, everyone. I always wanted to be a writer, but since today I want to be Indian movie director or a singer, it's far more profitable and lots more crowd, but I really thank you for being here with us. Yes. And that's precisely what I wanted to ask you. So, as cars need gasoline, your laptops, they need some electricity. So the writers here, they need some applause. So please give your best to the authors here. Okay, India. Okay, Jaipur. So basically, Alexandra said that I'm coming from Croatia. It's a very small country. We are just like 4.5 million. So we could add and fill in this auditorium here without any problem or without too many problems. But no matter how small a language or how many people speak it, I think that each language can express everything. So it's kind of my attempt, my motto, to express whatever I can. My genre, as Alexandra mentioned, were short stories, and is a short story. So I'll in my really lousy English, I'll read you a piece of a story that sheds a little bit of light on the way. I mean, Croatia, as you might know, it was part of a bit bigger country called Yugoslavia. My colleague Rumena Buzarovska, also from Macedonia, Macedonia also formed part from that of that country. So later on, she promised me that she would sing for you if you ask her nicely in Croatian, for example. So the only thing that you must say is "Molim te Rumena," and she would sing. So okay, now you know it. Okay, this story is telling something about the end of Yugoslavia from the perspective of someone who's been living quite nicely in early adulthood, let's say, there. Thus spoke Mayakovsky. There was no doubt Zazu Mayakovsky was crazy. I met him in an insane asylum, watched him rage about the madhouse corridors, saw 3 husky male nurses collapse him like a folding chair and pack him up into a straitjacket. And even if it were not for all that, there was his name. Not even in the late half self-managed socialism, not even at the end of the golden 80s, no one sane was called Zazu Mayakovsky. Back then, he introduced himself as a poet. And whatever he was doing as outside, he kept on doing inside the asylum. Except that here, it was called a therapy. He wrote gloomy poetry on pieces of toilet paper, poems called The Cold Shower, Electroshocks, A Solitary, and a lot of haikus with the names of sedatives in their titles. I'm not exaggerating if I say that because of this, in certain circles, he enjoyed somewhat of a fame. The rumors said it was anything but insanity, an internal exile, an act of rebellion against the repressive regime. And almost every day, someone would clatter down from the city to read those doodles, to sigh and bow in front of a flock of unruly madmen, which in the end turned to everyone's profit. Even the guards, cigarettes, women, alcohol, all cheap, yet free. Everything that the coked-up poet could not consume now became the guard's loot. One of them even admitted that they encouraged him into all that writing mess by granting him tiny benefits. They would let him skip a daily dose of roughing up. They'd slide in a chocolate for him here or there. It sounds surreal, but those were the 80s, socialism, and even the asylum guards thought it made sense to invest in poetry. I visited him on duty as a delegate of an uncertain mandate, as his wife's new boyfriend. Anna Mayakovska. This sounds like a beginning of a love letter, and perhaps that's what it was. Either that or a beginning of some only slightly different madness. Of course, just like Zazu, that's not what Anna was called, but it was more exciting to call her that. The borrowed surname fitted her like another woman's dress. It stood out at all the wrong places. It gave her what nature deprived her of, frailty. And back in those days, we said it like a love statement and a joke, while sweaty and sticky, at the end of our love wrestling tackles, we lay on the carpet filled with mites and breathed heavily into the ceiling and laughed. Anna Mayakovska. My mouth is still full of that name. Anna worked at a school. She was a language instructor. By all standards, she was an attractive woman. But that thing between us was not love at first sight. Simply, we spent too much time among the same people. We saw each other at the same places, both of us in our late 30s, both of us somewhat dented, roughed up at places, both of us in some kind of wanton drunkenness brought by the excess of vigor you don't even know you have, or you don't know what to do with it. And so one evening we were sitting at the same table, side by side, and I caught sight of her feet. And after them, well, her toenails. If there ever was a romantic moment in our affair, that was that. Summer was all around us, open terraces and open sandals, and Anna's toenails, painted in a shiny, transparent polish, silverfish, almost almond-like, on her pretty long toes, sparky and gracious like a constellation of stars, full of promise, and both of us had a couple to drink, and couple too many. Maybe that's had something to do with that too. Thanks, and please, applause for me, of course, and everyone else. Thanks.
Thank you, Roman. Our next reader is Inga Žolude, and another lesson in political geography. Inga comes from Latvia, which is one of the 3 Baltic countries, which used to be part of the Soviet Union. So in the past 30, 40 years, we've had all this kaleidoscope moving around Europe, and it continues to happen. Inga writes in Latvian. She also teaches creative writing at the University of Latvia. She's a prose writer, so we're staying with prose, essayist critic, literary critic, and she is the author of 3 novels and 2 collections of short stories. And one of her collections, called A Solace for Adam's Tree, won the European Union Prize for Literature. Inga.
Labdien, man ļoti liels prieks būt šeit. Es ceru, ka jums patiks mans lasījums. So, that was a little bit of Latvian. We can, of course, compete which country is bigger or smaller, and if Croatia is like 4.5 million, then Latvia is 2.5 million, not 25, but 2.5 million. And I write in Latvian language. When I came here, my friend said, beware of monkeys. And I was like, why? I mean, I'm not going to go to the zoo or whatever. And I had prepared a story to read from my latter collection of the short stories, but then I thought that actually it's the right time. The right time has finally come to read a short excerpt from my first novel called Warm Earth. And I hope you will get the idea why I chose exactly this one. I walk along the river, everything is green. I speak through myself, green words through green leaves with myself, as if possessed. And I'm searching for something. Aconitum napellus, diccentra spectabilis, picea abies. It'll be Christmas soon. It's warm here in the jungle. I'll give Nellie the snakeskin I found a good while ago and saved in my room, roughly wrapped in a paper bag so that the tiny insects whose behavior and eating habits I still haven't fully figured out won't chew through it. Nellie had woken early in the morning and was sitting by the river like a local flower. We belong here. We're indistinguishable from each other. We are indistinguishable from our surroundings, when only the constant rays of the sun can cut through the skin of green leaves. The doctor comes a few times a week to make sure we haven't fallen to some local sickness, bitten by some poisonous insect or reptile. We're doing well. I feel completely liberated. The earth breathes damp and wheezing. Everything rustles and sighs. The mind expands and rests on the leaves like tiny dewdrops. I can distinguish and tell which are my mind's drops, which are Nellie's, father's, and mother's. They have different radiance, as if in each of them is preserved a milligram of my, Nellie's, father's, and mother's souls. We have a small stray mare cat. The doctor even said that we should be cautious and not give him food, since they don't usually come so close. He could also attack, but the meerkat continues to make us happy when he returns and shows us his temper like the chief of the tribe. Father catches butterflies throughout the woods. Maybe they're the last of the breed, which he preserves and sticks with pins. Mother speaks of the city, about hot water, comfort, the frost, clean blankets, air conditioning. None of us wants to hear about it. She talks to herself, and the things she says are so repetitive. Every day, the exact same thing. She says that one of the locals from the forest will come at night and kill us in our sleep. Every night, someone kills me in my sleep. I can't sleep. Maybe the silence won't let me. The silence that rustles as if someone truly might come. And I know why during the day we always wander around, lost in thought, because we're so worn out and nervous, and we're so afraid that someone will hunt us down, that we don't want to show it to anyone else. Paldies.
Thank you, Inga. And the next reader is Rumena Buzarovska. We're going back to the Balkans, and don't mistake the Balkans for the Baltics. That's strictly forbidden. So, Rumena is the author of 3 short story collections and a study on humor in literature. She's also a distinguished literary translator from English, and we discovered that we actually translated some authors, the same authors, namely J.M. Kotzi, whom I translated into my native Czech and she into Macedonian. She is also editor of the literary magazine Blesok, and she's associate professor of American literature at the State University in Skopje. Rumena.
Well, first I have to disappoint you by saying that I will definitely not sing today. Roman, I know you're heartbroken, but I am reading a piece which is a little bit about music, and my last short story collection is called My Husband, ironically so. There are 13 storytellers, women storytellers in the short story collection, but it started off with a short story called My Husband the Poet, and there the wife speaks about how now she detests her husband poet because now she realizes that he's a really crappy poet. But then she also discusses how once he tried to woo everybody by singing something ethnic. So I really can't stand it when people do that at festivals. So I'm not gonna sing for you. I come from Macedonia, as Alexandra noted. And since we've established a competition, I will say that our country has 2 million people. So the scale of events in India and the whole, also the scale of this festival is a little bit shocking to me, but nevertheless I really am enjoying myself. I will read an excerpt. Also, I like writing in the first person, as I like the reader figuring out the subjective voice of the narrator and seeing what's behind it. So, and this section actually I read this section, this short story excerpt in Chennai. I was at the festival at the Hindu Lit for Life there last week. And it went well with the audience, so I thought, okay, maybe I can try it with you. This is a sister bad-mouthing her sister, and it's about these new forms of art that make people known and make people travel, even though those forms of art are pretty crappy. I like talking about people who are not good at what they do in the field of writing or music. So the cynical bad sister says, for a long time, she performed her jazz before audiences dominated by young men with hard-pressed lips and thick-rimmed glasses, and women of a certain age whose self-styled hairdos, though impeccable at the front, were unkempt at the back. Then, all of a sudden, she became a composer and started writing contemporary scores. My ears were even more troubled by this music, if one can call it such. Her pieces typically started with the repetitive hitting of a key in the lower register of the piano, continuing until the sound faded away completely. The piece would then proceed with the staccato banging of a key in the higher register, followed by a tremendous noise in the middle register, repeated in such a manner until the piece came abruptly to an end. All this dialogue, as the critics dubbed it, reminded me rather more of the dialogues she and her late husband Simon had enjoyed at home than anything resembling what could be called a work of art. My sister's experiment in music further evolved in the field of orchestration. Having always been au fait with contemporary trends, Bella soon realized that, when the Balkans were concerned, the greatest demand for art was related in some way or another to war. This theme had the benefit of enabling foreigners to identify the only thing they knew about the area, with the additional advantage that they could pride themselves upon their compassion in being so moved by the great pain experienced by the indigenous folk. Thus, my sister's first composition was entitled Bloody Greeting and started with a gunshot. The live performance of this work kicked off with the explosion of a cap from a toy gun, spreading a terrible smell amongst the first few rows of the audience and triggering a coughing fit in one elderly lady. The conductor was entrusted with the theatrical aspects of the gunfire, but as the string section was supposed to start screeching dissonantly immediately after the shot had been fired, there would either be no time for him to dispose of the gun, or he would become so confused that he would continue waving the gun in his right hand throughout the entire first movement. Some people in the audience were fascinated by this new concept, and it received many raving reviews in the media. Her next work was called Screams, and was a postmodernist mix of contemporary and historical conflicts.
Her novels have been translated into 22 languages and have received several literary prizes. And her novel Butterflies in November was published in English in 2013. Would you like to read here or over there? Yeah, thank you.
Good day to all of you. I'm very honored to be here and to experience the hospitality and the generosity of India. I've traveled far from the edge of the world, and being Icelandic means that you live on an island and you write in a minoritan marginal language called Icelandic, and my speciality is to write in a language that no one understands except the few Icelanders living on the island, 333,000 people. I'm stressing the 3,000 because everyone counts. And so I'm really sorry to disappoint my fellow writers, because I will be the winner of this competition of how few you can be and still have your own language. I'm going to read a few lines from my novel. One of my novels that has been translated into English is called Butterflies in November. And it's the story of a young woman, 33 years old, who is standing on crossroads in her life. And she decides to take a summer vacation in November and to travel around the island. The story takes place in Iceland. But at that time, in the Arctic day is so short, you have so few hours of light that no Icelander would consider traveling around the island. But at the same time, it's very practical because we have only one road that goes around the island. It's called the Ring Road. So you don't have to make any decisions. You just continue and you stop when you want. You don't have to decide on anything. That woman is a translator and a language genius. She speaks 14 languages, which means that she lives in between languages. And you can find, in fact, that type of character, that hero, in other novels of mine, persons speaking too many languages, but not finding it very easy to express themselves. In fact, I think that languages are overrated in human communications, and there are other ways of expressing themselves, and I myself often oppose languages to physical expression, or languages and bodies are like oppositions in my books. So yes, and she goes on a travel, and she's not alone. She has got a travel companion who is a 4-year-old boy who is deaf, and he has got thick glasses. And I wanted to oppose them, a woman who speaks too many languages and someone who doesn't speak. Another theme that is recurrent in my books, and to show that there is a world beyond languages. I would also like to add that I think we humans are pretty much everywhere same, and but in Iceland we don't have an army or military service, and the police is not carrying weapons. I had to add that to put it into a context. So I'm going to read a few lines. Yeah, I think for my if I haven't spent already my 4 minutes on stage. And in Icelandic, the first phrase sounds like this. Þegar ég bremsa rennur sauðkindin fram af húddinu niður á veginn, niður í forina. That's how Icelandic sounds. And then the English translation, and the hero, she has just run over a sheep. because that's very frequent in Iceland. On the ring road, the sheep are free, and there are more sheep than Icelanders. There's like 800,000 sheep in Iceland, and she's running over animals all the time. The book starts, she runs over a goose, and she prepares it as a farewell supper, the last supper for her husband who is leaving her. And all the animals are, in fact, she runs over, are cooked. And there is a special book of recipes that goes at the end of the book with all the food that she has eaten during the travel, because a writer has to take good care of his characters. They have to eat. It's a long book, 300 pages. So she has just run over a sheep, and she has to find out by the ear mark who is the owner.
Auður, you have 1 minute to read now.
Yeah,
please.
1 minute, yes. When I break, the animal slides off the bonnet onto the road into the mud. The windscreen cracks into thin threads, spreading like crochet lacework or a spider's web spun by a woman, and then shatters. The windscreen wipers continue to swing to and fro, and the small church, which was only glued to the dashboard with craft glue, stands intact. Thank you very much.
I think you can order the book on, is it in the bookshop? Yeah, you can find the book in the bookshop or order it on Amazon.
Yes, he's saying that you can read the rest of it.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Issa Asgarally, who is from the island of Mauritius, which means that he speaks French, but also he speaks other languages. Mauritius is a small place, but it's multilingual and multicultural. And this is what Issa actually devotes his work to. He has written a number of books, a dozen books. And one of them, I think he's going to show you and talk about it, is called Mauritius, an Island of Cultures. He is also someone who single-handedly, at least it appears so, single-handedly makes sure that the Mauritian literary life keeps jogging along smoothly. He is the editor of a literary magazine called Italique. He presents a monthly literary television program on Mauritius Broadcasting Corporation called Passerelle, and contributes a weekly book review to the daily newspaper, L'Express. Issa.
Thank you. Hello. Greetings to all of you from Mauritius. I have 3 remarks to make on the theme of this session, and as I have only a few minutes, I am going to tweet them. The first remark, ours is really a polyphonic world. There are about 7,000 spoken languages in the world. According to UNESCO, the number is 6,000. Only 400 languages are written, and the literatures of the world, I use the plural, are expressed in these 400 languages. In Mauritius, situated almost in the middle of the Indian Ocean, with a population of 1.4 million, colonized by the French and by the British, we have about 12 spoken languages because the population that is not indigenous are of various origins. These 12 languages are French, Creole, created by the African slaves from the French and African languages, Bhojpuri, brought by Indian immigrants from Bihar, Hindi, Urdu, Tamil, Telugu, and Marathi, and Chinese languages, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Hakka. I speak, as Alexandra just said, French, Creole, and English, and write in French and English. But for writing my books, non-fiction, I use French. My wife, Sarojini, speaks, besides these 3 languages, she speaks Bhojpuri, Hindi, and understands Urdu. In fact, any Mauritian, if he or she has been at school, even primary, is at least trilingual. This is not the case in Europe. Second remark, the third globalization, which is supported by the new forms of technology and diasporic movements across the world make these 7,000 languages accessible to each other. Every day in the world, men and women are taking up the challenge of Babel. That is, to communicate in spite or with the help of the many languages that they speak and write. Last night, at a single table at the Clark's Amer, 3 languages were spoken: English, Hindi, and French, as I met a French lady living in Switzerland. Last remark, the diversity of languages is, however, threatened. For many languages die every year, according to UNESCO. A language dies, I would like to recall that a language dies when they are no longer des locuteurs, individual speakers. Another threat is a monolinguistic attitude that dates back to colonialism. Let me take just one example to illustrate this statement. In France and in French overseas departments, many regional languages, le breton, l'occitan, le basque, Creole, are not recognized officially. To conclude, I would say that if there are 10 languages in a country, it is a good sign. If there are 5 languages, it is unfortunate. But if there is only one, it is tragic. So we must start talking about eco-linguistics. I would like to translate what I just said in French and perhaps in Creole. S'il y a 10 langues dans un pays, c'est bon signe. S'il n'y a que 5, ce serait malheureux. Mais s'il n'y a qu'une langue, ce serait tragique. And in Creole, s'il y a 10 langues dans un pays, il y a un bon signe. Mais s'il y a 5 langues, les moins bons. Mais s'il y a une seule, une catastrophe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would have loved to take questions, but we don't have time. We'll stop it here. But we do have Issa and Pierre going to be signing their books at the book signing area right here. You can grab your copies from there, and they'll be taking your questions at the book signing area too. Thank you very much, all of you here, in many tongues. We've got Angelica, Inga,